Hello, you're watching TVP World News. I'm Iryna Vereschchuk. The deputy head of the Ukrainian President's office has voiced concerns over Poland walking back social aid for Ukrainians living in the country. Iryna Vereschchuk added that Ukraine has to prepare a social support system for those returning to the country. According to Vereschchuk, the elderly, people with disabilities, single mothers and other vulnerable people have been left behind by recent restrictions in Poland. These include a veto by Polish President Karol Nawrocki last month on extending certain social programs for Ukrainians. As a result, child benefits will only be available to Ukrainians actually employed in Poland. As a result of the clampdown on social benefits, the former Ukrainian Deputy Prime Minister said Kyiv would need to bolster its social support system for returnees. This includes extra housing and social, humanitarian and medical aid. At least 3 people were killed and 4 more wounded after the Russian army struck multiple regions of Ukraine, including Kyiv, Zaporizhzhia and Sumy. At the same time, Russian authorities reported that Ukrainian drones struck occupied Crimea, killing 3 and wounding 16. Now, in Zaporizhzhia, emergency services recovered the body of a woman from the rubble left after drones struck a residential building, at the same time damaging nearby cars. All in all, 15 apartment buildings, 10 houses and several non-residential facilities were damaged across the city. Meanwhile, in the Ukrainian capital, a Russian UAV struck a high-rise building and a private house, injuring a man and sparking a fire. In Sumy, Russian drones also hit a high-rise, wounding 1 person. At the same time, Russian authorities reported that Ukrainian drones struck the luxurious Foros resort, located in occupied Crimea. According to local official Sergei Aksyonov, 3 people were killed, 16 more wounded, and several facilities were damaged in the attack. The Kyiv Independent reports that the attack may have been directed against high-ranking officials reportedly staying at the resort at the time, adding that its reporters were unable to independently verify the local sources making these claims at the time of publication. In his evening address on Sunday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy detailed Kyiv's upcoming diplomatic efforts at the UN General Assembly, including meetings with allied leaders and a global summit on abducted Ukrainian children. He also mentioned a planned meeting with US President Donald Trump.
The first meetings are tomorrow. We are also planning a meeting with the President of the United States of America this week. There will be a significant event regarding the return of Ukrainian children who were abducted by Russia. The summit is truly global in this regard. It is important that this week gives the world a strong will to take strong action. There will be no peace without force.
Overnight, a fire broke out at an electrical substation in Russia's Krasnodar region after a drone attack. According to regional authorities, the fire did not cause any casualties and began after drone wreckage crashed into the substation. Now, while Russian officials have not disclosed the full extent of the damage, Ukrainian Telegram media channels are saying that the substation was hit by drones at least 5 times. Furthermore, overnight, Russian Telegram channels reported multiple explosions across the region. The strikes prompted authorities to temporarily suspend operations of the Sochi airport, disrupting 20 flights. The Krasnodar region, located just east of occupied Crimea, has become a common target of Ukrainian drones, as the region's infrastructure is critical for Russia's air operations in the Black Sea. The Estonian Foreign Ministry has announced that the UN Security Council will meet on Monday to discuss Russia's recent breach of Estonian airspace over the Baltic Sea. 3 Russian MiG-31 fighters entered Estonian airspace last Friday, staying there for 12 minutes before departing.
Tallinn says the Russian jets entered its airspace without permission, while Moscow denies any violation. The Estonian Foreign Ministry called the incident a blatant, reckless and flagrant violation in a social media post announcing the Security Council meeting. This is the first time in over 30 years that Estonia has requested an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council. Ukraine has submitted a request to South Korea, which currently holds the presidency of the Council, to attend the meeting and present its perspectives on the issue, according to the country's Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha.
According to retired US Army Europe commander General Ben Hodges, Russian jets circling over Estonia for 12 minutes wasn't a mistake, it was a test. In an interview with TVP World, the former top military official warned these deliberate probes are meant to expose NATO's weaknesses and that only a strong and visible response will deter Moscow from pushing further.
It's not an incursion, it's not just an airspace violation. That was an operation, a Russian operation to launch 21 drones that landed all inside Poland, or the 3 Russian aircraft that were flying around inside Estonia for about 12 minutes. These were not 3 pilots that were lost. This was a deliberate probe of our defenses to see how we would respond, how quick we would be. And I think what they're finding is that we still have not figured out how to stop these things. And so the consequences could be shoot down drones, even shoot down an aircraft, as our Turkish allies did back several years ago, or maybe an asymmetric response, some sort of a very significant response against, let's say, Shadow Fleet vessels in the Baltic Sea each time launches an operation into Allied airspace.
According to a new survey for the Polish outlet Radio Z, 49.1% of respondents would not volunteer to defend the country if war were on its doorstep, while 44.8% would take up arms. 1 in 3 Polish women declared their readiness to fight. Respondents were asked whether they would volunteer to defend Poland in the event of war. 17.9% of them chose the answer definitely not, and the remaining 31.2% chose probably not. The opposite view was expressed by 44.8% of those who declared they would participate in defending the country if it was threatened, of whom 20.7% answered definitely yes. 6.1% of those asked were undecided. The poll also shows that 69% of people aged 18 to 29 would not defend their country should war break out. However, people aged 30 to 49 are the most likely to take up arms. An average of 60% of respondents declared their willingness to do so. European nations could potentially shoot down Russian planes violating their airspace, said Piotr Kaczyński from the European Institute of Public Administration while speaking to TVP World. Kaczyński used the example of the 2015 incident when Turkey shot down a Russian aircraft within 17 seconds of breaching its borders as justification for this type of reaction.
And this is Turkey, who is much more, if you like, friendly, was much more friendly to Russia back in the day than some European nations are towards Russia today. So can we shoot it down? Yes, because this is about protecting our sovereignty, our collective sovereignty of the Baltic states, territories of the Polish or Romanian or Finnish territory. The question is, will we have the courage? And here the protocols out there within NATO are in place, and should an incident occur that will allow for such a strike, then there will be such a strike.
The United States is looking to ensure that its decision to ease sanctions on Belarusian national airline Belavia does not become a backdoor for Russian airlines to obtain crucial spare parts. The Russian aviation sector, targeted by Western sanctions after the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, has struggled to secure the new parts needed to service its Airbus and Boeing aircraft.
On September 11th, Washington allowed Belavia to access U.S. aircraft parts after Belarus released 52 political prisoners, restoring limited commercial ties. The airline operates 16 aircraft, including 9 Boeing planes. Experts worried that U.S. parts could end up with Russian airlines already facing parts shortages due to sanctions. This concern has grown since the easing of sanctions, raising questions about tracking shipments. The decision now leaves U.S. manufacturers, especially Boeing, to decide whether to resume sales, while Airbus said it will carefully review any transactions.
The European Union is preparing its 19th package of sanctions on Russia aimed at tightening pressure over Moscow's war in Ukraine. The measures will not include a ban on Russian citizens entering Europe, sparking many concerns.
A ban on Russian LNG, tighter controls on banks, and possible tariffs on Russian oil delivered via the Druzhba pipeline. These are the measures which will be included in the EU's latest 19th sanctions package against Russia. Surprisingly, the package will not include a ban on Russian citizens entering Europe.
From the economic perspective, we should welcome Russian tourists in Europe, and the reason for that is, it's cynical, but it's obvious. When Russians come to Europe, they spend their money. They spend their money and they don't really get anything valuable in return.
The Russian opposition welcomed the decision, and so did Yulia Navalny, the wife of late Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny, who said that she appreciates that the European Commission made a distinction between, quote, ordinary Russians and the regime. But experts point out that the other side of the coin must also be considered.
It doesn't happen often, but it does happen once in a while that basically Russian assassins and spies and other agents of Russian government enter the EU under tourist visas, usually under fake persona, and they can enter the EU and travel freely unwatched.
Ukraine also expressed concern, stressing that not just Russian President Vladimir Putin should be held accountable for the ongoing war, but also Russian society.
Russians willingly or unwillingly are supporting the regime and supporting the war right now. So making sure that it is not that this feeling of that you will be punished for launching the war, it should be instilled. And this is why there should have been a ban on Russian citizens into Europe.
The package must now be approved by all 27 EU member states. These include Moscow-friendly Hungary and Slovakia, who still rely on Russian oil imports and blocked EU sanctions packages against Russia in the past. The two countries have already expressed their readiness to block the new package of restrictions, and the European Commission has announced its plans to unfreeze approximately 550 million euros in subsidies for Hungary to change its mind on the issue. But will it? This remains to be seen.
The European Union is considering trade measures targeting Druzhba pipeline oil transit in its latest effort to phase out Russian oil. These would come separately from the planned 19th European sanctions package, which targets the Russian shadow fleet and the purchases of liquefied natural gas. The European Commission is looking to impose tariffs on the import of oil from Russia as part of its external trade policy. The new trade measures would bypass the strict rules for sanctions, as those require the unanimous approval of all member states. This means that the executive branch of the European Union would not have to seek approval from Budapest and Bratislava, which have previously voted against measures to stop Russian oil imports, quoting energy security reasons. Imposing tariffs on oil transported through the Druzhba pipeline would be a significant step for the European Union in achieving independence from Russian oil. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan criticized the United Nations on Sunday, saying that the world is bigger than just the 5 members of the Security Council. He went on to declare the United Nations is unable to meet present-day challenges. According to Erdogan, the framework that the UN operates on is antiquated, reflecting a global reality from 80 years ago, which is insufficient in 2025. The Turkish president also said that there is no justification for leaving resolutions of humanitarian crises to countries with veto power in the UN Security Council. Finally, he announced that during the upcoming UN General Assembly meeting, he will reiterate this position, which according to him reflects the conscience of humanity and contributes to the solutions of conflicts. And that's all for now. Thank you for watching, and please stay with us here on TVP World.